Going West by Jean Van Leeuwen. Pictures by Thomas B. Allen. To the memory of all those brave families who left their homes to find a new life, going west. One day in early spring, we packed everything we had into our wagon, tied our milk cow, Sadie, on behind, and set out to find a new home, going west. There were 5 of us, Papa and Mama, me, Hannah, just turned 7, my little brother Jake, and Rebecca, a fat baby with yellow curls. Mama cried. She was leaving her 3 sisters and all our furniture and the piano she loved to play. But Papa said we were going to a place where anything you planted would grow and a farm can stretch out as far as the eye could see. We left behind the town we knew, the woods, the hills. We rode, bouncing and swaying in the creaking wagon, day after day. At night, Mama cooked over a campfire, and we slept close together on the wagon floor, with stars winking through the opening in our canvas roof. Here is what was in our wagon: blankets and pillows and quilts, Mama's favorite rocking chair, trunks full of clothes, barrels full of food, a cook stove, a box of tin dishes, all of Mama's cooking pots, all of Papa's tools, a Bible, a rifle, and a spinning wheel. There's barely room for us. Sometimes it rained. Our wagon got stuck in the mud and we all had to get out and push. Once it rained so hard that the wagon leaked. That night we slept in wet clothes and wet beds without any supper. Rebecca cried, and Jake said he wanted to go home. Mama didn't say anything, but I think she felt the same. We were all tired of the rocking wagon and the dust and the same sights day after day. Jake fell out and hurt his arm. Rebecca caught a cold. At night she coughed and coughed. Mama looked worried, but we still rode on, going west. We came to a river, all muddy and wide. How will we get across? I asked Papa. The horses will take us, he said. First the water came up to the horses' knees, and then their chests. Suddenly Papa shouted, "Hold on tight!" The horses were swimming. Water was pouring into the wagon. Mama held me tight until at last I felt the horses' feet touch bottom again. We had crossed the river. On the other side of the river, the land was flat, with no trees. There was not a bush and not a stone, nothing but green, wavy grass and blue sky and a constant whispering wind. It seemed a lonely, empty place. But Papa said, "This is the land we've been looking for." As the sun was setting, we came upon a place where wildflowers bloomed in mounds of pink and lavender and blue, like soft pillows. "Look," said Mama, smiling, and Papa said, "Here is where we will build our house." The next day we began. Papa took the horses and rode away. When he came back, he brought logs from the creek. For many days he worked. Slowly, with Mama helping, he built walls, a roof, a door. Finally, he took Mama's rocking chair and set it next to our new fireplace. It was only one room, with a dirt floor, but at least we slept in a house again. Mama planted a garden. Jake carried water from the creek to do the washing. I minded the baby and swept the dirt floor and helped Mama hang checked curtains onto the window. "There," she said, "we are ready for visitors." But no visitors came. We were alone on the vast prairie. Papa rode away again, many miles to town. For 3 long days we watched and waited, and then Papa came back. He brought flour and bacon and 6 sheep that he traded for one of the horses and a surprise, real white sugar. Mama baked a cake, and it reminded me of home. Summer came. A hot wind blew. Papa went out hunting for rabbits, and Jake and I picked blackberries next to the creek. Mama lay down in the grass with the sheep. "Oh my," she sighed when we found her. "This is a lonesome land." Day after day the sun beat down, baking our little house, shriveling up the plants in the garden. It was so hot that nothing moved, not even the wind. "If only we had a tree for shade," said Mama. One afternoon, Jake and I were at the creek. Dark clouds suddenly covered the sun. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. We ran for home. But before we got there, hail came tumbling out of the sky, big and round and hard as marbles. "Quick!" I shouted. "The buckets!" We put them over our heads and kept running. Mama was waiting at the door. "Thank goodness you're safe," she said. When the storm was over, Mama's garden was squashed flat. "The land is good," she said, "but the weather is hard." "Never mind," said Papa. "In the spring we will plant again." Mama was frying donuts, and Jake and I were doing our lessons on the dirt floor, when visitors finally came. Indians! Jake hid under the bed. I crept behind the rocking chair, my knees trembling with fright. They looked so fierce. But Mama smiled. She gave one of the Indians a donut. The Indians smiled. Mama kept making donuts, and the Indians kept on eating donuts until Papa came home. And then the Indians went away. The wind turned cold. Mama stored up potatoes and berries and nuts for the long winter to come. Papa went hunting for deer. He came back with Mr. Sweenson. Mr. Sweenson stayed for supper, and afterward he played his flute while Mama sang, sitting around the fire. And suddenly the prairie wasn't empty anymore. We had a neighbor. "Do they have Christmas out here?" Jake asked, and I wondered too. But Mama said, "Of course." So we hung our stockings by the chimney. Rebecca got a cup, and Jake a whistle, and I found Nellie, a rag doll with yellow braids. Later, we had wild turkey for dinner, and Mama opened the jam she had been saving all year. And everything was just like Christmas. Now the icy wind seeped through the cracks in our log walls. We put on all the clothes we had and huddled next to the fire. One morning it was so cold that Mama's fresh baked bread was frozen solid. And then it began to snow. It snowed for 3 days and 3 nights. Papa tied a rope from the house to the stable so he could feed the animals. Jake and I did our lessons, and Mama helped me sew on my quilt, and we all listened to the wind howling outside. At last, everything grew still. Looking out, we saw no woodpile, no stable, no sky, nothing but snow drifting up to the roof of our little house. It was a long, cold winter. We had nothing to eat but potatoes and hard biscuits and nuts. Rebecca cried because she was hungry, and one day Mama counted the potatoes and said, "There are only 6 left." But then slowly the snow began to melt. Each day the drifts under our window grew smaller. Papa took down his rifle and went hunting again. And that night the smell of rabbit stew made our house warm once more. One morning, when the grass was turning new green, Papa said, "It's planting time." He hitched our horse to the plow and broke through the tough prairie grass to the dark, rich soil beneath. For days he worked, plowing long, straight rows. Then Mama dropped in seeds and Jake and I covered them up. The warm sun shone, the seeds sprouted, and all around us, as far as my eyes could see, was our farm. It was Mama's birthday. Jake and I picked flowers for the table. Papa brought home a surprise, a little tree from the creek to plant by the front door. Next year, if the corn does well, he said, we will buy a piano. And Mr. Sweenson came for dinner with another surprise, his new wife. "Welcome to our house," said Mama. We ate Mama's food and listened to Mrs. Sweenson tell about back east and sang, sitting around the fire. Outside, a soft wind was blowing in the new corn. I looked around at Mama in our rocking chair, and Rebecca sleeping, and Jake leaning on Papa's knee, and our house felt like home.